When you say assistance,
I don't have any.
idea?
I don't have. We're obviously going to work with Detroit moving forward to help it move forward, but I don't have a to present to you today.
Can we help Detroit? We are now going through exactly in detail what we had a meeting yesterday, just getting a brief on the status. The question is, we don't know at this point.
At this point, they don't know. Steve Laser, who says Detroit deserves a bailout, and Cheri Jacobus, who disagrees with that. So, Steve, bailout. We're going to say the B word on a Friday here? Is that what we're going to do, Steve? Why? Why do you think that that's the right thing to do right now?
At first I have to say, when I thought of this, when I heard about it, I said, what, Detroit made its own mistakes, let them deal with it, let them go bankrupt. But I tell you, I thought about it in terms of the bailouts of Wall Street in 2008.
The big banks, the
big
automakers.
Banks, and these are folks who failed at their core competency. And we still bailed them out, these private companies, and it actually didn't work out so badly. We actually got most of that reimbursed, and those companies are now doing fairly well. These are private sector, public sector employees who were promised a certain benefit. In some sense, a deal is a deal. They didn't do anything wrong, and now we're saying, oh, you have to bear the brunt of these mistakes by the people who've run the city of Detroit, when we've bailed out these folks who are making millions of dollars on Wall
Cheri,
Street.
so he's pointing out it's a slippery slope, right? So if we pick some certain companies to bail out, we're not going to bail out one of our biggest cities?
Well, look, as we was discussed before, it's not going to really affect the United States that much. It's not going to be this domino effect. But here's the other thing. It shows poor political leadership that this was allowed to happen. The voters can vote in political leadership that won't allow this, that will actually stand up to the unions who are getting all of these goodies in an unsustainable situation that the taxpayers can't afford, which has caused this situation. So you can say, well, yeah, these public employees, they're owed this. This was promised them. It's not their fault. Well, that doesn't really matter, because it's not the fault of the taxpayers either, and it's not the fault of the rest of us to have to bail out this city that is messed up. So I don't really agree with you. I mean, I feel sorry for these folks, and God help us. I hope that the rest of the country doesn't end up like Detroit, and I hope that everything turns out well eventually. But it's really not our job to do it. So
what about the consequences of that? I mean, and the truth is, when we look at the financial crisis, sure, the big banks had a role in it, but consumers had a role as well. They had personal responsibility for getting involved in bad debts and things like that. And what Cheri's saying is that the citizens of Detroit had a responsibility here, and maybe they didn't end up and hold up their end of the bargain.
Well, there should be consequences, and I'll tell you what the consequences should be. Well, let me first say what they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be the folks like the firemen who have been protecting the city of Detroit. They shouldn't be the police officers who are protecting the city of Detroit, who have dealt with a city that's like one of the most dangerous cities in the country, if not the world. The consequence should be, I understand the point that it's not the fault of the rest of the folks in the country. The consequence should be, if the federal government has to come in and bail out a city like Detroit, the entire leadership of the city gets terminated, essentially. All of the elected leaders.
It's interesting. I talked to someone today who really likes the current mayor and says that he's one of the best guys he's seen in a long time to work in this city.
He doesn't seem like a bad guy, but we are where we are because of failed leadership. I happen to agree with Cheri on that point, but it's still a situation where these folks have worked their whole lives. They've been promised this benefit. Folks like firemen and police officers.
So Cheri,
what happens if we
brought in, instead of a bailout with actual money, and there's a big question about where we'd actually get the money to help Detroit, but what about actually sending leadership to Detroit? What happens if that's
consultants,
the way? They already did that in the private sector, but if the federal government's talking about a partnership, should the federal government have a role if one of the biggest cities in the country is facing such a thing?
Well, first of all, I'm wondering, does the federal government set such a great example? Will we really want to send somebody to Detroit?
That might be a good point.
So maybe we can find somebody else. But look, this is a political fight, and this is in terms of these overly strong unions that are coming in and demanding benefits that simply cannot.
But city officials agreed to those benefits. It's not like the unions just came up and decided this is all I'm going to get. I'm going to get all this by myself.
Right.
City officials actually signed the dotted line.
So there needs to be, I think, political an upheaval. We've seen this in other states where the public unions are getting more than the people.
Are you guys agreeing here? Is this what's happening? You're coming together.
But
I don't know what just happened.
A bailout might not work. I mean, look, we bailed out 2 of the 3 big auto companies, and they filed with bankruptcy anyway, I believe it. And now we're saying that I'm hearing that they're probably going to be okay through all of this. So I don't know. I don't know what the justification is for bailing out Detroit.
We're still owed $20 billion.
We don't know if it'll work to bail out Detroit. We don't know if they're going to keep on doing the same thing. I think it has to go deeper.
1 million employees who didn't lose their jobs.
I'm going to have to leave it there. By the
country.
way, we had this fly that's kind of like our show mascot that's just suddenly on.
No,
I
I
don't know what that
cologne.
I don't know what that means for the segment. But I'm glad to have you both here, Steve and Cheri. Thank you very much. You never